All right, so it's week two. I did get a little bit of good news today. Actually, let me just jump over to Blackboard.
Oh, I got good news.
Um, the good news is one of the things that I'd like to be able to do sometimes during class is to have small group discussions where I can break you up, and that's why we have those groups on Blackboard. Or I could put you in a small group room, so rather than just one person talking at a time, you can work on a problem or have some conversation in small groups. So apparently that feature is going to be available in our WebEx meetings for next week. So maybe we'll try that out in class next week, or I can give you a question or a problem to work on. And then using the learning groups that I created last week, I can create a separate room and give you some time in a private room to work on that problem. So that feature is coming. I think it's going to be available as of this weekend. So we'll maybe hopefully be able to try that out next Monday in class. So we'll have a look at the plan for the class today. I'm trying to be a little more organized and intentional. So for each week, you can see exactly what it is we're going to be doing. So we're going to do a little live poll. I said for our in-class lessons on Mondays, we're going to build an e-commerce site using ASP.NET this semester. So we can maybe I'll have you guys suggest some ideas of what our store should be. And then I can put up a poll and we can vote and we can decide what kind of shop we're going to build. We want to set up the project. We'll set up a new ASP.NET Core Web application today. And we're going to play around a bit more with controllers. Last week, we just looked at it and we did a little bit. We're going to look at setting up a new controller. And then we're not going to work with an actual model in a database today, but we're going to kind of have a pretend model, like a fake one. And we'll look at passing data from a model to a controller and then how we would display that in an MVC view. The other thing we're going to do, and I probably should have put this right at the beginning because this is our first thing we're going to do, is look at your the project, your own project for the semester. And I'm going to give you assignment 1A, which is very easy. It's due next week. It's worth 5%, really 5 very easy percent of your final grade. So let's have a look at that now, and then we'll get into these other tasks. So you'll find the assignment on Blackboard in the assignments link. It's the assignment 1A, the project plan. So here's the document. It's pretty simple. So you have until next Sunday to submit the document. You don't have to write any code. I will just go through it with you. So before you submit this document on Blackboard, you're going to have to go and use this link to this little ASP.NET site I set up. And before you submit your Word document, you're going to post your project idea on this website. And I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. And the reason I want you to use the website first is because I'd like everybody to build their own unique project. I don't want to get 20 projects that are all the same. So before you submit your document, you're first going to post your project idea on the class website, and you will be able to see all of the project ideas. You won't see each other's names, but that means, yes, Emily, it is on record. Thank you. So that means before you post your project idea, you can check and make sure that no one else has already posted the same idea for the project. Okay. And then once I review your project, you'll get an email notification telling you either your project idea is approved, or it might tell you you need to pick a different idea, and I can add comments as to what my concerns are with your project. Once your project is approved, then you would just fill out this Word document with your name, describe what your project is, explain why it's useful, and then create a GitHub repository. Doesn't have to be any code in it yet. Just create the repository and invite me, make sure your repository is private. So basically you have about a week to figure out what it is you'd like to build with ASP.NET during the semester. Okay, so I'm going to show you the project website, and you can see some examples from one of my other sections, from my Lakehead section. They're a week ahead of us, so all those students have already submitted their project ideas. So I'll show you kind of what the website looks like. And what you have to do, it's really simple. So once you have your idea for your project, you'll just come here and you don't have to log in at all. You'll just choose your section. So here's our section, our IMDW Monday section. So the first thing you do is just click the View Projects links, and this will show you all of the ideas that have already been submitted. And then to submit your idea, you'll just click on the Submit Idea link here, put in your student email, and put in a brief description, just maybe a sentence or two describing what you want to build. So for my other class, just to show you what this looks like, so you can actually see these. So the first one, and this is in order, so this student wants to build a website to review video games, where users can add, edit, and delete reviews of video games. So I just go in and review them. I can see the student email, and I can approve them. And as soon as I approve your idea, the website will send you an email notification. And whenever you submit your project to me, I get an email from the site saying, you know, Hung has submitted the project, here's the project idea, and then I will go in and... So when you look at these project ideas, you can see if they've been approved or not, but you don't see who the students are. So before you submit your project, you just want to read through the list in our class and make sure you're not, if you want to build, you know, a workout tracker, you need to make sure no one else already has submitted that same idea and had the idea approved. Okay. So once I've approved your idea on the project website, then you just fill out this little template, this Word document, and upload it to Blackboard. So you can build any kind of website that you like. Users have to be able to perform create, read, update, and delete operations with the database. They have to be able to register and log in. Other than that, the functionality of the website is up to you. The only thing that you can't build is you can't build an online store like an e-commerce site, because that's what we're going to be building together on Mondays in class. So if you're building, you know, even if we build a bookstore and you build a music store, the sites are going to be largely the same. And you're just going to be reusing the code from class. So I don't want you to build an e-commerce site unless the way that site works is very different from the kind of store we're going to build together. Okay, so this is part 1 of the assignment, this 1A, which is just your project plan. And then you can see these are the other 4 phases. Okay, thank you, Justin. So I think I need to update the document. Thanks for letting me know that. So I will re-upload that file. Okay, so this should be the correct file. I will just double check that you've got the right file. Excuse me. Yeah, this should be is the current document now. Okay, so those are all the requirements for this part of the assignment. Does anybody have any questions? And you can either use the chat or you can feel free to use your mic if you have a question. Yes, Farouk, absolutely, that can be part of it. If you want to include image uploads and deletions, definitely. Uh, yes, Emily, other people could edit the data, but they should have to register and log in order to change data. An anonymous user wouldn't be able to change data, only registered users. So there will need to be for the for part 1B, the CRUD functionality, for this at that stage of the project, yes, anybody could edit or delete it, but we'll add authentication later. So in the final version, only registered and logged in users can make changes. Um, Diana, can you make the repository? Diana, do you mean the GitHub repository? Yes, in fact, the GitHub repository must be private. And then here's my GitHub username. So through the repository settings, you then go to manage access and you send me an invitation. And that way, the only people who have access to it are you and to me. And that's a requirement that, because otherwise your code is public where other people might take it, which is not okay for a graded assignment. Does anybody else have any questions about this part of the project? To show you where this sort of fits into our schedule as well, here's the syllabus. So we're in week 2 today. So this part is due Sunday, but then you'll actually have 3 weeks to do part 1B, worth 15%. So that will be setting up the web application, setting up your database, connecting them together, and then implementing the functionality so users can create, read, update, and delete. All of that is going to happen. You'll have 3 weeks to do that, which should be lots of time. In the past, I've typically given 2 weeks for that phase, but I'm going to give you guys an extra week. Farouk, we can actually do that today. That's a great question. So the application, we're going to start building our e-commerce store today. So at the end of class, I will make sure to upload to GitHub. So I will show you how you'll be able to do that as well. Visual Studio already has, basically we use the Team Explorer. It's already integrated with GitHub. One other syllabus note, actually, I just want to point out quickly that I didn't mention. So in 3 weeks, it's Thanksgiving. So we're not going to have a class on the Monday. So for that week, our topic is fairly light that week. It's not a very heavy class. So for that week, we're just going to do an asynchronous class, meaning I will just record the lesson and post the code on GitHub and a couple of brief activities. And you're free to do that anytime in that kind of 2 week period between the 5th and the 19th. You can go ahead and work on that. That's a fairly easy lesson, so there's nothing terribly complicated with data annotations. So we won't have class on the Monday, but there'll still be a class that you'll just go ahead and complete on your own time. I'd rather do that rather than just say we have no class and no lesson, because that just means less learning for us. You know what? No, Diana, the lesson's going to be, the due dates are always going to be Sunday. You may just have to refresh. Maybe, I think I originally had the date in there as the 29th, but I will just check that. Thank you. It will be on the Sunday. Thank you for pointing that out. So it's the 27th. Yes, Farouk, we're certainly going to be how we're certainly going to connect the database up well before the assignment is due. Absolutely. And if we need to delay it, we'll delay it. But yes, that's kind of the main learning objective of part of 1B of the assignment. So obviously we need to have that working in class before I could expect you would be able to do that on your own. Yes. Okay. So second item, that's our first order of business, was setting up the assignment. So it's due on Sunday. So again, submit to the project website first for approval. And once you get an approval email back from me from the website, then you can just fill out the Word document and upload it to Blackboard. So this part of the project isn't going to take you very long. I would suggest brainstorm a few ideas of what you might be interested in building, and then pick the one you like best and submit it to me for approval first. Okay, so I want to set up our in-class project, but before we do, said we're going to build an online store using ASP.NET. So what we should probably do is figure out what kind of store you might like to build. So I can put up a quick poll, but maybe if you want to use the chat, if you have a suggestion of what kind of store we might build together during class, why don't you put it in the chat, and then I'll put some of these suggestions into a poll, and we can do a quick live vote. So feel free to throw suggestions. Okay, it's a good one. And I will start adding some of these options to a poll, and then I'll publish the poll and we can vote. I think, Diana, I love the idea of an auction. That one may not quite fit with what I'd like to do, just because I would like to be able to build a shopping cart feature, etc. I think the auction, it's a great idea, maybe a little advanced. Gift computers. Okay, all right, and video, all right. I think we've got 6 options. So I'm going to publish the poll and you guys can vote. So you can see the instructions here's the link. I'll throw it in the chat, but you can see it on my shared screen. So if you just go to pollev.com/richfreeman521, or you can text, you can vote on your phone. The phone number is there, and if you text Rich Freeman 521, you can then vote with A, B, C, D, or F. I'm just going to check that link and make sure it's working. Is the poll available if you try it? Okay, so you're voting. That's great. Okay, that's odd. Usually this shows me the results in real time. Let's see what's happening. Yeah, no, you shouldn't have to submit. It should just record your response. Okay. Normally this screen refreshes in real time. So yeah, as soon as you pick an option, Justin, it records the response. But you can change your response if you then go to another. Okay, if you haven't voted, be sure you get your vote in. It looks like right now video games is the most popular answer. Okay, so it looks like it looks like we are building a video game store. Okay. Thank you for your participation in that. Okay. Yes, it is like a horse race, Ivan. It does go back and forth. Okay, so what we want to do is let's set up our project that we're going to work on through the semester for our video game store. So you'll want to open up Visual Studio. And we are going to create a new project. We're going to pick the same options we picked last week. And also these are going to be the same options you're going to use when you set up your project for your assignment. So we'll click on Create New Project. Yeah, my younger daughter is a big Last of Us fan. Huge. So it does show you on the left, so you don't have to browse. It shows all the project templates in the main area, but on the left, it shows you your most recently used projects. So you can either pick ASP.NET Core web application from here, or you can pick it over on the left. Excuse me. And as I think we discovered last week, if you, and I think Justin and Rebecca, you can confirm, if you are on Mac, it just says ASP.NET Web Application. It doesn't show the word core here in your list of templates. If I remember your experience from last week. So I'm just going to pick ASP.NET Core Web Application, and I'll click the Next button. So now I'm going to give this project a descriptive name. I'll call it COMP2084. Get me a game. You can call yours whatever you like. Right, you see web app on a Mac. Okay, so pick that same option. So you can call your project whatever you like. Generally, though, you want to not have any spaces in the name. And then I'm going to go to Create, where we'll pick the remaining options for our project. So we'll click Create. I'm going to choose the Model View Controller Web Application template. It should default to .NET Core 3.1. I've already got the configure HTTPS attribute checked off. I want to make sure that stays checked. That will force all pages to use an SSL certificate for enhanced security. And up here on the top right in the authentication section, it defaults to the option no authentication. I'm going to click this blue link that says change. We're not going to implement authentication for a while. Okay, Liam, so you've got some options. You can, yeah, it's probably great that follow along as best you can, and then when your Visual Studio is working, you can go back through the lesson screencast. If you need help, then I've got office hours tomorrow morning. You can book an appointment with me tomorrow if you want to share your screen, and I could try to help you debug the problem. And I'm going to change the authentication option. Okay. I will show you the license in a minute. I'll go through that with you. Emily and I sorted that problem out on hers. It's not that it's broken, it's just locked. So I'll show you how to unlock it. So we're going to change no authentication to individual user accounts. We're going to leave this option that says store user accounts in app, and I'm going to click OK. So I'll just leave this screen up for a second. And then Liam, I will show you. I'm going to go over it with everybody because many others may have this issue where your Visual Studio Enterprise. Liam, I assume you're using Enterprise? Yeah, and you got it from the Azure store. So Farouk basically just posted the short version of where to get the key, but I will show, I'll go through the process as well, because other people are going to have the same issue if you've installed 2019 from the Azure store. So I've got individual user account. I'm just going to click OK. And then I can click my final create button. So I'll let that run. As this runs, thanks, Diana. If you log into the Azure portal, so you can install Enterprise and it will run, but it only runs for 30 days without a product key. So in the Azure portal, you just have to go and find your copy of Visual Studio 2019, and you can access the key there. So Diana's put the link in as well. Thank you, Diana. So I'll just show you. So if you see the education link, you can go there. If not, you can just search for education in the search bar in the middle top. And once you click it, Visual Studio Enterprise is probably going to show up right in the middle of your screen. And once you click on it, there's a white button here that says View Key. So when you view that, you just click the copy button. And then on that Visual Studio pop-up window that Liam, that you're getting, near the on the right side, there's a blue link that should say unlock with a product key. So yeah, you just click that unlock, you paste in your license key, that validates you are a student. This is a valid copy you got from the Azure store. It's not like a 30-day trial you downloaded from Microsoft, and then you're good to go. So anybody who's downloaded Enterprise from the Azure store is going to have to do that within 30 days. Okay, glad that is working. Thanks, Farouk and Diana, for your assistance. So now we've got our project set up. So I just want to launch it, and it's going to look exactly like our project looked last week. So I'll click on the debug menu, and I'll start without debugging. This is going to launch the IIS Express web server. And it's going to open our application up in the browser. So it's the exact same template as we had last time. The name of our project shows up here and in the footer. Because we picked authentication, under the debug menu, So to get it started, just click on the debug menu on the toolbar, and start without debugging is the third option. And it defaults to whatever your operating system default browser is. I use Firefox, so it automatically loads in Firefox for me. If you ever want to change this, if you just click beside this IIS Express, you can choose what browser you want Visual Studio to use as your default browser. But otherwise, it's just going to use whatever your normal default browser is. So we're going to have, if we look at the project setup, you don't have start without debugging. Hung, so do you just have start, do you have start debugging? Hung and Steven? Sometimes it's easier just okay. Do you have this button here with the green triangle? Okay, so that will just start it in debug mode. That's okay. You can start it in debug mode. It just means every time you change the code, you have to press stop first. Maria, I'm not sure you can upload a file through the chat here. You'd probably have to upload that file to a browser. Okay, yeah, so the shortcut key, thank you, Rebecca. So it may be under the run menu. Okay. So Stephen, you did this to get the start without debugging, right? You click the drop down and then click start without debugging there. Okay, yeah, Janelle, if you get that connection not private, you can just say add exception. It's just saying your SSL is not created. The SSL is just from Visual Studio. It's not an SSL certificate from like a recognized certificate authority. So that's fine. Don't worry about any kind of SSL warning. You're safe. If your browser says the connection's not private, that's okay. So if it gives you the option to just proceed anyway, go ahead. Okay, so our site should be running now. And if I click Solution Explorer, then we get the same project structure that we got last week. If you don't see your Solution Explorer, you just go to the View menu, and Solution Explorer is the first item here. You can turn it on. That way we can browse the project structure. Yes, thank you, Rebecca. So View, Pads, and Solution if you can't see your Solution Explorer. So if we open up our project, last week, we were working in the home controller. So Visual Studio automatically gives us a default controller called the home controller. Maybe a different version, Justin. That may be why. So last week, we took our home controller that comes with two methods, comes with index and privacy, and we created a separate method in here. What we're going to do today is we're going to create our own controller. So I'm going to go to my Solution Explorer, I'm going to right click the controllers folder, and I'm going to choose add controller. So our controller files should always go in the controller folder. So again, Solution Explorer, right click controllers, add, and controller. And then we'll get should get a window pops up like this. So Visual Studio includes 6 different kinds of controllers. Later in the class, eventually, we're mostly going to use this one. And these controllers will come with pre-built code for doing create, read, update, and delete, which is awesome. We don't have to write all that code ourselves. We can just create a controller and Visual Studio will already have working create, read, update, and delete methods. We're not going to do that yet today. We're just going to start, though, with the first option, an MVC controller empty. So just pick this option and click add. So let's name this one. Let's name this categories controller. We're just going to play around with this one for today. We may delete it in a later class. So the controller names always contain the word controller at the end, and they're written in Pascal case. So every first letter is capitalizing. Justin, you are going to add a controller. You're not overwriting. The controller should have a .cs extension, but it will get that extension automatically. So I can type in .cs here, but it's not required. I picked the first one. I'll go back. I'll do this again. MVC controller empty. So pick the first item in the list. We're going to pick MVC controller empty, and I'll call it categories controller. So you need to change the name. You don't want to call it home controller because we already have a home controller. We're not deleting that file that's already here. We're keeping this one. So this file will be called categories controller, and normally this is a plural word. So I'll click add, and we'll see what Visual Studio gives us. So it gives us a new controller, a new class called categories controller. And this piece of code here, this colon controller, this means it inherits from the MVC base controller class. Yep, that's fine, Farouk. Okay. And you'll notice it automatically gives us one method in here called index. So we don't have to keep this method, but we generally want to. So what we want to do now is we want to make a view that will load at the URL localhost/categories. It should load the index view. So I'm going to go over to my Solution Explorer. I'm going to open up the Views folder. And first, I want to make a subfolder. So typically, whenever we create a controller, inside of Views, we create a subfolder for all of the views that are loaded by that controller. So under Views, I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to add a new folder. It's going to have the same name as my controller, so I'm going to call it Categories. So any of the pages involved for displaying, adding, editing, or deleting categories, all of those views will appear in this new subfolder. So it's highlighted in blue. So again, to create the folder, just right-click Views and choose Add a Folder, Add New Folder. And you'll name that new folder Categories. And because our controller has a method called index, we'll want to make an index view in this new categories folder we just built. So I'm going to right click my new categories folder. I'm going to click add view. And we've only got two choices here, a razor view or an empty view. We're just going to make an empty view and we'll add a little bit of HTML content to it. So pick an empty view and we're just going to call the name. The name actually defaults to index, which I'm going to keep. Again, we can include the extension CSHTML. We don't have to. Visual Studio will automatically assign the extension because it's a view. So we're creating a view called index. This matches the method name that's also called index in our new controller. And I'll click the add button. So Visual Studio opens up our new view. And now inside of my views and categories folder, there's now a file called index.cshtml. So we've created the controller. The controller has a method called index. We've created a new subfolder for all the category views, and we've created a view called index.cshtml. We just have some empty comments here on the view. I'm going to take those out. And we'll just put on a heading that says, pick a category to browse our store. We'll add some more content to this page later. But for now, we just want to see if we can actually load our new page. So now I want to try this out. So you can put in, maybe somebody wants to put in the chat, what URL would we go to in order to load our new page? So we've created the categories controller that has a default method called index, and this method is going to load this view. Yep, so localhost is the first part of it with whatever port number. So it'll be HTTPS, localhost, and then your port is going to start with 443, and then whatever numbers. So Visual Studio randomly assigns the ports. So for me, this is running at, let's see, running on 44355. Right. That's great. Rudia and Farouk / categories. So you will have to change the number here. These X's, those will be whatever port number you're using. So if I go, so mine is 44355 / categories. So this should call the categories controller. And if there's no method name specified in the URL, the default method that gets called is index. So this should call the index method, which should load our new index view. Liam, just look in the address bar of your browser. So Visual Studio, it randomly assigns a port for every web application. You can also see it in Visual Studio here. So if I click on if I go to the project menu, and the very last option is the project properties. In the, let's see, one of these options, it will show us here. So under project and properties, on the debug tab, it shows this is the HTTP, but here's the SSL URL. Emily, we could maybe chat later about that. Nope, not a silly question at all. Justin, what do you mean yours is blank? What's blank? Could you be a little more specific, please? No, I made no changes to the controller at all. I made no changes. Okay. Did you put any content in the page? I added this HTML on line 1. So I didn't modify the controller, but I did modify the HTML in the view. Okay, if your HTML is not showing up, you may want to view the source of your page and check if you can see it. So here's my H1 right here. There's my content showing up. Okay, if you can't see it, but your HTML looks like mine on the page, is there anything else on your view? Okay, one thing you can try, Justin, is make sure you may have to compile. If you spell the wrong URL, well, let's see. Let's say I do this, category. Yes, it's blank, so you have to make sure the URL is spelled properly. Thanks, Ivan. So it may be that you're just not you're not loading the right URL. That's possible. So let's just do one more thing and then we will take a break. We want to add a link to this in our navigation bar. Well, we're using SSL, Hung, because we're using HTTPS. Yeah, oh, in the properties you're talking about. Yeah, it's the URL down here, not the app URL. That's the non-SSL version. So if we don't check HTTPS when we set up the project, it'll run here on HTTP, not HTTPS, and the port won't start with 443. 443 is reserved for SSL requests. So where would we go so that we could add a link? Maybe we want a link that says shop now. What file would we add that link to that would then load our page? Yeah, thanks, Farouk. So inside of views and shared, in the layout _layout file, we've got our navigation. So I'm going to make a new link here on line 28. I'll make a third LI tag. I'll use the same classes for our link, nav-link and text/dark. And then we'll want to use these two ASP, these server-side properties. So what controller should this link call? Yeah, it's going to call our categories controller. So the new controller we just made. And what action or method in the categories controller does this link go to? Yeah, it's going to go to index. and our link will say shop now. So I'm going to save that so those 3 lines I've highlighted in blue, this code is new. Everything else was already here in the template. So we've got a home link, we've got a privacy link, and now we have a shop now link. And this link is going to call our categories controller, going to call the index method, which will load our index view, where eventually we'll add a list of categories to this page. Not yet. We'll take a break first. So if I want to try this out in the browser, I'll just keep those lines highlighted. I'm going to come back to my site. And now if I go back to my home page, we've now got a new link in the nav bar that says shop now. And if I click it, we get our new page. So again, we can navigate around. I can go to privacy. But because this link is in the layout file, it's available. It's shared on all the pages. Okay, so there's our process for setting up a new controller. We create the controller, and then we create a folder for the views, and then we can create a view for any methods in the controller. And then we might put a link to it in our navigation so that users can access this part of the website. Okay, it's about 5 to 12. So I'm going to stop our recording here. Yes, Stephen, yes, you select an empty controller. Okay, so I'm going to stop the recording now, let it finish processing so that I can upload it to YouTube. Let's take a 10-minute break here, and then we'll come back and we'll work more on this page. And before we go, we'll also look at how we get this stuff up on GitHub. Yes, Liam, go ahead.
I'll just unmute my mic because it'll be easier. But
Sure.
so when I go to my localhost, it says that the site can't be reached. I was just wondering if last week we set up some sort of server or something.
No, because the server is iExpress is the server.
Okay. Do you have any idea as to why it is that the link from the page that we were looking at for the port number isn't loading anything up?
If you want to share your screen,